Thank you, Chaitanya. Good morning, everyone. I'm reading today from Rays of the One Light. Thank you. These are commentaries on the Bible and Bhagavad Gita, written by Swami Kriyananda and based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. This morning's topic is self-reliance versus self-reliance. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. Last week we considered the need for attunement with God, with the gurus, with the wisdom of others, until we make that wisdom our own. There is a strong and in fact valid belief nowadays in the need for standing on one's own 2 feet rather than depending weakly on others to carry us by their strength. Swami Kriyananda was once asked, "What is the best yoga posture?" "That one," he replied, which sets you squarely on your own 2 feet. Our strength must come from within. If that strength comes from the ego, however, instead of from soul consciousness, it is like a guitar string without its sounding board. The notes it emits will be thin and feeble. Our strength must come from within, but must be coupled with recognition of our inner link with broader and higher realities. The Bhagavad Gita says, "Everyone in this world whose life is glorious or prosperous or powerful, know that his achievement is but a little spark from the great sun of my effulgence." Jesus, in talking to his disciples, emphasized also the power of attunement with his own consciousness as a ray of the divine. For this ray had descended already through him in response to their devotion. It was a sign that God was already listening to them with receptive attention and did not require to be wooed in that way any longer. In the passage preceding the one that we read last week, Jesus said, "I am the true vine, and my Father is the husbandman. Every branch in me that beareth not fruit, he taketh away. And every branch that beareth fruit, he purgeth it, that it may bring forth more fruit. Now we are clean through the word which I have spoken unto you. Abide in me, and I in you, as the branch cannot bear fruit of itself, except it abide in the vine. No more can ye, except ye abide in me." This was the meaning of Paramhansa Yogananda's counsel also, when speaking more intimately to the disciples of the need for attunement with him. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. When we speak of self-reliance of the little self versus self-reliance on the higher self, we can't really talk about versus, because it is both. We need to not only stand on our own 2 feet, but we need to lean into that divine presence. Yogananda had a wonderful saying, which was, "I will reason, I will, I will act, but guide thou my reason, will, and activity to the right course in everything." St. John of the Cross one of my favorite saints, said that he gave us this advice for how to tune in to God. He said, you should live in this world as though only God and your soul were in it. Only God and your soul. That's all that's happening in all this world. And he said, if you do that, then nothing can capture your heart. No earthly thing can make your heart captive. So we need to continue that striving towards attunement with God. We need to act in this world. Non-action is not a possibility. It's not an option. We're acting all the time. If we get up to get a drink of water, if we decide we're going to just sit on the couch for the rest of the day, that's still an action. So we have to put forth our energy. We have to manifest things in this world. We have to try. We have to remember the most important thing of every day, which is to get ourselves into the meditation seat. It can be very hard, but we need to do that every day because that's how we attune. By doing the practices that we have been shown. I remember when I first became a disciple of Yogananda and I was asked to make a vow of discipleship. It's not, giving forth your firstborn child or anything like that. It's a very simple vow to love and honor God. But I thought, now, how can I be sure that I'm a disciple of Yogananda and vow that for the rest of my life? And then I realized, wait, I've been seeking all these years, and God has shown this to me. I've read Autobiography of a Yogi, and it rings with truth. I know I can trust that vibration, that joy, that bliss that comes when I read his words, when I look into his eyes. I'm going to take the plunge. I'm going to go by faith. I'm going to accept what God has given me, and I'm going to put my heart into it. And for 50 years, I have not regretted that decision, even for a moment. There was a saying, I think it was Ram Dass who said this, but he said, we all think we are chasing the guru, but really, the guru is chasing us. And I certainly felt that way when I had visited Lake Shrine. I had read the autobiography, and then I came to Ananda, and there was a picture of Lake Shrine, and there someone handed me the autobiography. I thought, okay, this guru is chasing me. So we need to give our hearts. There was a beautiful story I read recently about a devotee named Gopa. And Gopa had incarnated as a gopi during the time of Krishna in Vrindavan. And he loved and worshipped Krishna. And then after that incarnation was over, he incarnated many, many, many times, always striving to know God and love God and serve God. And he became a great yogi. But his heart was not fulfilled. He longed for that union with God. He wanted to know God, to grasp God. And so in his high state, he traveled through all the three worlds, the physical world, the astral world, the causal world of ideas. He went everywhere searching for that union. And he came across, what is it called? Goloka Vrindavan, I think. It's the dimension, is how it's described, of where Krishna resides. And he entered the city and he saw that Krishna was not there. He was out with his friends, enjoying pastimes, playing his flute and singing and dancing. And all the townspeople were very sad. They were waiting for Krishna. So some of them were preparing food to serve to Krishna when he got home, and others were cleaning and making the paths clear so that Krishna wouldn't stumble on anything on the path as he was walking home. And then they were just so excited, they kept chanting his name all day long, waiting for him. And finally, the time came when he was going to return. And everyone, including Gopa, who had just arrived, everyone went to the Yamuna River, waiting for Krishna and all of his friends to come home. And they came across the river, and Gopa saw Krishna. And in that same moment, Krishna saw Gopa. And Krishna put away his flute. He ran from his friends, and he ran, leaping, to find his way to Gopa. And he embraced him. He was so thrilled, so ecstatic to finally have Gopa come home, that he, in his embrace of him, Krishna fainted. He lost consciousness. He fell to the ground. And everyone gasped, "Oh my God, what happened to Krishna?" And they were fanning him and rubbing his feet and whispering in his ear, "Krishna, Krishna, wake up." And finally, he came back to himself. And he explained to everyone, "I have been waiting all this time for Gopa to return to me." It was so much ecstasy, I had to lose consciousness. And Gopa is each one of us. We think we're chasing the Guru. We think we're chasing God. St. John of the Cross also had this beautiful saying, "If you are seeking God, know that your beloved is seeking you so much more." So let us remember that we are not alone in this quest. We are guided by God if we want to be, if we try to be, if we have the humility to think, well, maybe there's some things I don't know. Maybe there's something that I could learn. Maybe God knows best. And if we are open and receptive and want that guidance, God is right there. He's been waiting. But he doesn't impose himself. He doesn't grab you and say, "Do this," although circumstances certainly do that sometimes. Circumstances line up and say, "It's this," okay? But if we want him, he is ready to come and enter our lives, enter our hearts, and be with us in every moment. So how do we practically do that? Well, I was thinking about my own path, and I can't recommend chanting highly enough, because in chanting we are repeating the name of God, like Jai Guru, victory to the Guru, victory to God, who is the Guru. Or we are singing a song to him. Door of my heart, open wide, I keep for you. We're affirming some quality. I want only thee, Lord. Thee, only thee. Even if we don't feel like, well, there are some things that I still want besides God, like a new refrigerator or whatever it is. We are affirming that we want only God. So, chanting engages the mind. You're playing an instrument, so you have to pay attention. You have to be focused. It's not about making beautiful music, although often it can be beautiful, but it's about using music as a spiritual practice. Yogananda, in his 1938 edition, I believe it was, of Cosmic Chants, he said, music is a divine art to be used not for pleasure, but as a pathway to God. And that was a pretty strong statement. Think of all the music we listen to for fun, but he's saying it's a path to God realization. And then in later editions, after Yogananda's passing, it was changed to music is a divine art to be used not only for pleasure, but as a pathway to God realization. But I can attest that chanting, as Yogananda said, is half the battle. And the more that we can focus our minds, learn to sort of play and sing at the same time, and keep your attention focused at the spiritual eye, there is a bliss that comes to you that is amazing. I think some of the highest moments of my life, my spiritual life, have happened when I was playing with other people, and really all of us trying to sing as one voice to God, and magical things have happened. So we have tools on this path. Chanting is just one of them. We have many, many tools, many techniques, many practices. Find that one that thrills your heart and go deeply into that. Don't be distracted by the things of this world. They're ephemeral. They just won't last, and they're like nothing. There's a very famous black and white movie from the very early days of movies. I don't believe, maybe it was a talkie, I'm not sure. But anyway, it was made by this very famous French director whose name eludes me. But if you watch it, you will see that many of the motifs that he created in this movie have survived all these years, and they are still in all the latest versions of Beauty and the Beast. Did I mention that? Beauty and the Beast is the name of it. Anyway, so if you remember, there's the wall where you see arms coming through the wall holding torches. That was in that original black and white movie, and many, many things like that. Anyway, when the heroine wants to visit her father, who's very ill. The beast agrees to let her do it. And she is given by him a beautiful white horse. She's dressed in silks and jewels and, flowing cape, all this rich stuff she's given. And one of the things is a rope of pearls, very, very expensive pearls, beautiful, priceless. And on the way, she's by herself, dressed in all this finery, while she gets robbed. And the robbers see this richness, and they grab for her pearls, and they pull it off her neck. And then they look at it, and it's just a rag with knots tied in it. It's the illusion of pearls. And that is what we have in this world. It's just an illusion. Only God is real. And the more that we tune into that reality, the more bliss we have in our lives. And the more we lean into that attunement, especially in times of tribulation, the more we will receive answers, enlightenment, guidance, instruction. It's all there waiting for us.
That image that Nirmala was giving of chanting, I will just segue onto a little bit, because that experience is like we melt into the chant when we go deep with it. And the chant begins to chant us, not the other way around. We think I'm singing "Who is in my temple, all the doors do open themselves," etc. But at a certain point it's like, and the chant may call for a line to be repeated multiple times. It's like, and when you're in a group that's connected in that way, it's like everybody's locked onto the same chant. Not just we happen to be singing the same words and the same melody, and we got it all correct this time, instead of somebody being on the wrong page and putting in the wrong chord or whatever. But it's like we get so sensitive that, oh, it's time for that line to be repeated, or it's time for the chant to get quiet, or it's time for whatever. And it's like we are no longer impeded by the personal. This topic, well, I have to, since Swami mentioned it, I have to just do a little show and tell here. I was going to do this before the chanting, but I thought, no, I don't want to interrupt the rhythm. But this is my guitar. Sounds a little silly to say, but I have not had this guitar for almost 2 years. I was playing a different guitar until today, and it came back to me after having been in the shop and having been, surgically disassembled and reassembled, and it's like, this is like the bionic guitar now. But I appreciated Swami's imagery in the reading where he says a guitar string without the sounding board is just, it's like there's no sound to it. You can pluck the thing and it doesn't do anything. And then you get it's just, I started playing this guitar in Seattle in the early 1990s. And this guitar was donated to the church there. And so after 4 years of playing it, I was faced with a choice, because Swami asked us to move back to Ananda Village. And I was not happy about the idea of leaving this guitar behind, including the 4 years of chanting that I had put into it and Swami's music. So I went to the guitar store. And I looked at every kind of 12-string guitar you could name. I looked at $3,000 Martins. I looked at, identical to this. I looked at every model that they had, and nothing sounded like this guitar because it had warmed up. It had acquired that vibration. There was this connection to it. So I bought the identical guitar to this guitar, brand new, brand spanking new. I handed it to them and I said, here's your guitar. I'm taking this one with me. And it's there, and it's still there in the temple after all these years. It still doesn't sound as good as this one. I don't know that anybody really plays it that much, but there is that, and ultimately, this is just a symbol of something. This is a symbol of us. We are the instrument. The guitar is an assistance. It gives us a certain sounding board and lets us play a little bit. But there is this deeper connection, and that's one of the phrases that kept coming to me in connection with these readings. Get connected. That's like the assignment of this reading. Get connected. There is a beautiful and very touching story from the life of Joan of Arc, Saint Joan of Arc, who, as many of us know, was, heard voices and saw visions as a young woman, and ultimately had the guidance to go and inspire the troops of France to eject England from their country. The English troops were there and, stationed all around the country, and, it wasn't really their country anymore. And, lots of drama involved in this because people didn't believe her and she kept getting correct guidance. She knew things she couldn't have known. They were asking for proof, and she would tell them, your troops were just defeated today. And this is 100 miles away. And believe me, there were not cell phones, and there was not internet, and there was not, telegraph, and yada, yada. And sure enough, 2 days later comes the news. We were defeated on that morning, just as she said, and on and on and on. Well, anyway, she has all these victories. She became, this is just so amazing to me, she became, at that time, the youngest person to ever be in complete charge of their nation's armed forces. She was 17 years old. She was in charge of the entire armed forces of the country. Well, she finally was captured because people listened to her guidance when it was convenient for them, and then later on they just were like, well, we have other priorities here. And she was like, if you give me the troops and allow me to do this in 6 months, they will be gone and this war will be over. If you do not, I give you 20 years to do the same thing. Well, they opted for the 20 years, and it took 20 years. Meanwhile, she got captured, and she was put on trial. And one of the reasons we know so much about her life is that her entire life was on trial, because nobody believed her, nobody trusted her. Oh, it had to be dark forces speaking to her, etc., etc. They asked her a question, and this is part of why I wanted to tell the story. They asked her an impossible question. Are you in a state of grace? She can't answer yes, because that's blasphemous. That's sort of taking all of this personally. She can't answer no, for heaven's sake, because then on what authority does she do all the things that she's doing? Okay, so she's got neither yes nor no. No good options there. What does she say? She says, if I am not in a state of grace, then I pray that I will be brought to that state. And if I am in a state of grace, I pray that that will continue. And they just stunned silence. I mean, who could answer a question like that? She answered it exactly how you have to answer it. And we can answer the same question. Because, you can't, if somebody asks, I don't know that anyone ever asked Swami Kriyananda, are you a saint? Certainly many people would have wondered, are you a saint? I think he would have had to answer in a similar way. I think he would have said, it's not for me to say, except that I am dedicated to becoming a saint. I'm completely dedicated to Master. But that sense of, if I'm not, I pray that I will be. And if I am, I pray that I will continue to be. In a sense, that's the answer to the question, self-reliance versus self-reliance, is we're trying to rely on God. We're trying to allow, as Nirmala was saying, we're trying to allow the Master's God in whatever form to flow through us in such a way that we know where we're going. We can be a channel for that in this world. And if we lose it at some point, God forbid that we lose it. I mean, that's the great fear is, oh my God, I'm going to lose it. Well, in a way we can't lose it because it's like we're part of this universe. There's this lovely myth, except that there's an awful lot of truth in this myth, which is why it's stayed relevant all these millennia. The story is of a labyrinth and people going inside the labyrinth to fight the Minotaur who devours them, and all that's left is their bones inside there, and it's just not a happy ending at all. Well, Theseus is going to go in there and fight the Minotaur and win the king's daughter as a result, and I believe, it seems like that's usually the way these things go. And she, I think, is somewhat taken by him because she has the good sense to say, this is not going to have a happy ending unless you take this little piece of thread and unspool it on your way into the labyrinth. Fight the Minotaur, do that thing, but then get back out again. And so he does. He unspools this long thread, wending through the labyrinth, goes in, fights the Minotaur, victorious, and he finds his way back out because he spools it back up and keeps walking and following it. We can get lost in this universe. The thought struck me. I love studying physics and, the vastness of the universe. And, in theory, they think that the universe may be around 93 billion light years across, more or less, give or take a few billion one way or the other. But they don't really know, it's not like you can really gauge that sort of thing. It's not like you can walk all the way to the end and say, oh yeah, I've got my tape measure here, and I measured it all the way out to the inch. And there's a little wall at the end says you've reached the end of the end of the road here. It doesn't go any farther. But in a way, we live in a labyrinth that is 93 billion light years across. That's really, really big. And we can just get lost in it for incarnation after incarnation after incarnation. And that thread that leads us back out is in the spine. So my two little aphorisms for today to leave you with are, get connected, or if you're already connected, stay connected. Those are kind of basically the same word, or same concept, connection. The second little aphorism is, find your spine. That we have this cute saying, oh, I was beside myself. I was really upset. I was beside it's like, oh, so you're standing over here? Like, it was, spine here, consciousness there. Find your spine and live in it. Be there now, be here now, as Ram Dass said. And that, there is bliss in that. We are made out of stillness. And this, I'll just close with this simple thought that, and this is just segueing on what Nirmala was saying, every day we have to make that connection in one way or another. Get still. whatever practice you use to get still, get still. Because otherwise, we're just listening to commotion. We're just listening to, like in the affirmation he's talking about, quelling our inclinations. Well, what are our inclinations? Oh, hey, look it over here. Isn't that interesting? Oh, let's go over there. That's how we get tangled up in the labyrinth and just go down endless byways and pathways. Resolutely I quell my inclinations just to get quiet and still. Otherwise, we're just listening to somebody else's idea, somebody else's opinion. And hey, if there's wisdom in it, that's one thing. But wisdom in groups is rare. It's in connection with the divine. That's where we find it. I mentioned this in the fire ceremony this morning. One of the things that I always appreciated about Swami, even when it was challenging in the practical terms of the day, is he would not follow an opinion. He would follow wisdom that resonated for him. He had to feel it on the inside. And he could be extraordinarily energetic. He could be extraordinarily creative. He could be challengingly creative. But it was always coming from the inside. He always felt it on the inside first, and then he would try it out. And he had the good sense, after incarnations of working with this kind of thing, he had the good sense to ask people, what do you think of this? What do you think of that? Okay, and then he would take feedback. But if he knew strongly on the inside that it was the right thing to do, he would just do it. And if he didn't, even if it made perfect sense to everyone else, he would wait until he actually felt it resonating on the inside. And that's a beautiful thing to do. Is it easy? No, it's not easy. Because there's a momentum in this world. You know, I learned a little bit about momentum way back in the day when I used to ski as much as I could. And I was okay. I was a decent skier. But I remember the first times that I came out to the Rocky Mountains, or I came out to California, and real mountains. I mean, I grew up in the Midwest. You know, we had little bumps that people called Mount such and so, and it's more like such and so hill. Anyway, coming out to California, I mean, you are zooming down a straight slope that's groomed, you know, going really, really fast, faster than you maybe should, and then it flattens out at the bottom. And guess what happens? All your momentum is going right into the mountain. And meanwhile, you know, you're trying to stay on your skis, and what has to happen? Your legs have to be really, really, really strong. Because otherwise you are going to go smush right into the mountain, because it's, you know, all that momentum has to go somewhere. We have to learn, where is the momentum? If the momentum is always going out, if it's always taking us out, then we just are wandering around in the labyrinth. And if we can take it in and listen and hear, feel that inner guidance, then we can find our way directly out of the labyrinth. There's no time, there's no space. You know, it's been colorfully said that the spiritual path is around 3 feet long, from the base of the spine to the point between the eyebrows. It's not that big a deal in one way. And yet there's an entire universe inside here. You know, when we talk astrology and this planet is squaring that one and opposing the other, and it's, you know, it's, and then frankly speaking, the planets are kind of sticking their tongues out at each other right about now. You know, we see it in the world around us. But it's also on the inside. I mean, that is a reflection of this on the inside. And so we have to straighten it out on the inside, get the energy to flow on the inside, and then the outer starts to have a little more harmony to it. If we can do that, and to the extent that we do that, get connected, find your spine, we can live in divine light all the time. We'll take an offering and then have some music.